The King's back. 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 The King's back.
Yeah, what's up? What's good? What's happening? Welcome to my live stream. I am the actual King Smith, and it is Friday, November the 14th. The government is back open. I took off for the next week. Hold on, what am I saying? There we go. Because I still had some plans that I needed to execute before I could get my mind back in work mode. And let me tell you, I'm happy to be back at work. Yet at the same time, I'm trying to work and get to where I'm at a point in life where I can make my decisions free for me and my family and what I got going on, and not have to necessarily wake up and worry about work. Today's episode, or today's live stream, I'm going to be focusing on Chapter 2 of Coach Greg Adams' free ebook that you can get from his website, gregadams1.com, in which he wrote an ebook that is titled 52 Things Men Must or Men Should Do Before Getting Married. And I added as well, get into a long-term relationship. And part of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this subject is this one. I do some mentoring for some young men, and probably one of the most asked questions that young guys will talk about is like having to deal with the ladies, young women, so to speak. You know, hey King, man, so tell me what you recommend about blah blah blah. Hey King, man, so I was considering doing this and doing that and everything like that. And 9 times out of 10, when they're talking about these young ladies, what I'm hearing them talk about are things that they do for them. And I'm not hearing anything back about what value they're getting back from it. It's like they're doing it just for the attention or the affection, or it's because what they think that it's what the ladies want. And I've asked them sometimes, what are you getting out of this? Hey, well, man, I just want to make sure that I treat her right. And I'm like, but why? And I'm not saying that there's nothing wrong with that, but I'm saying why? What is your why? I'm asking them this. Are you looking at building something with this person? For a good bit of people, and those of y'all that are watching, there's less than a handful, and I'm 41. There's less than a handful of people that I can think of that you're still with the same person that you were with, having fun, trying to build a life with when you're 18, 19, and 20. There's not a lot of people out there on this earth that can say that. At least I don't know that many people. Maybe there are those that are out there. So I'm looking at doing this series where I'm talking about Coach Greg Adams' ebook. And it's more for the younger folks out there. Or if you are a little bit older and you're thinking about these things, I really want to ask you, what's your why? What is your why? So let's get into it for what was discussed in chapter 2, in which chapter 2's breakdown is essentially where Greg talks about building yourself. And he's got several different points within this chapter that I'm going to discuss. The first one he talks about, very plainly, he says, fix your credit. Fix your credit. And I'm going to see if I could bring up the ebook here on the screen. We're going to do it live. Hold on, here we go. Let's do it live.
I can't do it. We'll do it live.
Okay. No.
We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
All right, you should be able to see this here. Let me take this part off. So the first thing that he talks about is fixing your credit. But before he goes into it, he makes a point where he says that China recently discovered that there's a masculinity crisis in their country and that it needs to be resolved for the benefit of their nation. Should we have that here in the U.S.? Are we experiencing a masculinity crisis here in the U.S.? Greg believes that there's not a lot of masculine men in the U.S. And that men enter into very manly situations in terms of getting themselves into lifelong partnerships. And he says that it takes a man to understand what he's getting into, and if he hasn't built himself up yet, he'll be entering it as a little boy, and he'll be ill-prepared for these lifelong decisions. And that's the thing about marriages and LTRs. They are, in fact, lifelong decisions with impact. Shout out to God Happened to Me. Said good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Let me bring that ebook back up here. So then he says, so in this category, we're going to build ourselves up and really become the man we need to be, not just for your partner, but more for yourself. And that's where it's important. It's not about doing it for other people. It's about doing it for you. And one of the first things that he says, fix your credit. And he put it in big, bold letters. First things first. What I want you to do is get your credit fixed and get your credit score over 700. Over 700. Now, personal story here. My credit score used to be close to 800. And then after my divorce, I had to figure out some things in life in order to be able to keep afloat. I even considered bankruptcy at one point, and I'm glad I didn't go the bankruptcy route. Because while bankruptcy is, you can come back from bankruptcy. Look, our presidents filed for bankruptcy several times. I almost went the bankruptcy route, but it can be harder to. Bankruptcy can work if you have at least the ability to get some kind of capital really fast and float yourself, because you're going to have to use cash for a while to really get some stuff, or it makes it that much harder for you to get approved for things in certain scenarios. Now, I have built my credit score back up to over 700, but it took some time. I even reached out to a friend of mine's credit service, Fraser Credit, which I think she still has that business, which is going to be one of the next points that comes up as well. And I reached out to Fraser Credit Services to say, hey, take a look at my credit, see if there's some things that can be fixed on this bad boy. And then I've worked on I've created a plan. I've talked about this where I got with a financial advisor to work towards reducing my credit and building up my credit score. And it took time. I forgot how low it was. It got low though. It got real low. Not necessarily at the bottom, but it went low. I had to let some things lapse. Some things went 60, 90 days overpaid. I'm just going to be as straight up and as transparent as I can about that era and that time in my life. But when you fix your credit and you have that financial stability, to me, it shows discipline in how you manage your money and your obligations, right? And it also shows you being accountable for things. And if you can be accountable with your money, then you can be accountable in a relationship. Plain and simple. The next point that he talks about, and I'm going to scroll down here a little bit, is starting a business. And the way he breaks this down is this. He says the next thing that you should do is start a business. This might not be your primary source of income, but this should give you the confidence of what it takes to be a business owner. And when I think about this part, I'm looking at it like marriage is essentially a business contract, just like a long-term relationship is. It is a business contract, essentially. If you approach it with more emotion than business-minded sense, then that business is bound to fail, just like your relationship is. So he talks about men should have at least one business or one side hustle because marriage requires business level thinking and not emotions. And I agree with that. I agree with that 100%. And if you've never known what it takes to run a business, then you don't know the type of decisions that needs to be made for that business to be successful. And I think if you translate that, you should also consider, just like on The King and Me, we talked about that first pancake, right? Sometimes that first pancake, actually all the times, that first pancake never really turns out right. And you got to throw that first pancake away. Maybe you should be in a relationship so that first relationship can teach you what you should and shouldn't do. That's how I look at it anyway. But I could be thinking about this in the wrong manner. But that is my advice. My advice would be, quite simply, to start a business, understand what it takes to run a business. And to me, I agree with Greg, that can translate into the decisions and things that you need to make to be able to have a successful relationship. Next thing that he brings up in chapter 2 is pay off all of your debts. I'm going to scroll here a little bit so that this could come up. Pay off all of your debts. And he puts that as well in bold letters. And he said that this is something that most married people don't do prior to entering into marriage. So look, you're coming into something in debt. And I'm going to say this, and my lady, if you're listening, this is something that early on, when I was considering if I wanted to pursue and get into a relationship with you, I'm like, look, I had a plan to be debt free. And for me, it did not make sense to be in a relationship being in debt. That's how I looked at it. And I violated this one. Now, I don't think this ebook was out when you and I had got together. I think this ebook came out. I'm not sure when it came out. But I don't think this was out when you and I got together. But this was something that I had in my mind, because to me, it just did not make sense to be in a relationship or get into a relationship being in debt. You know, how are you going to be able to use resources to spend time together when part of your resources and things are going to be spent towards paying other people back? To me, debt plus a marriage or a long-term relationship, it's a pressure cooker, primarily if you can't get out of it. There's a couple of different pillars in relationships: finances, intimacy. Those are the two big ones. Communication. And if you can't get those things healthy, really, and you can argue and say that being in debt is not being financially healthy, then you have things and layers that can add to the stress of the relationship that's just going to doom it before it can really take off. So he recommends paying off all of your debt. And let me go back in here and see what he talks about here. He says that if one person has more debt over the other one, he makes the claim that it's not fair to the other person and that you're going to drag them down financially and probably wreck their credit as well. Observationally, I don't think I've seen that a lot. What I can say that I've seen is one person having significantly more debt than the other one. And it seems like people will get together and then I've seen this one. One person gets their debt paid off, and then once the debt gets paid off, they're like, bye. And they dip. That would create a villain out of me. That would absolutely create a villain out of me, 100%. The next point that he brings up here is having a stable income, and I don't think that I've created a theme for that. He writes, now it might seem like that is an easy decision to make, but understand this: when you have stable income, you're at least going to be able to provide for yourself. But if you're going to get into a marriage or a relationship, a long-term relationship, and you don't have a stable job, how fair is it to that other person? What decisions are you going to make in order to prioritize a family and a marriage, and you don't even have a job? They say that you should have trying to remember 3 to 5 years of stable income before you should consider a long-term relationship or a marriage. And part of that is job changes and things that occur will affect your entire family, not just you. Not just you. And I don't think that people really understand the full gravity of stability and how stability can like having that stability can keep you going. If you're bouncing from job to job and you don't know where your next source of income is coming in, then the stress that could come from that is going to make it that much harder for you or the other person to have faith that you're going to be able to take care of them. Shout out to Joe. Joe Lobin said, pay off my debts and I'll stick around at least for a minute or two. That's funny. Hey, I appreciate you, Joe, for checking out the live stream, man. Good to see you, brother. The next point that he talks and he builds up here is build multiple revenue streams. And that part right there, this is the toughest part. Now, if you followed some of his advice and you started a business, and let's say you've built multiple revenue streams, why is that important? And I'm going to scroll that up here on the screen. Why do people talk about develop multiple revenue streams? From a risk standpoint, Multiple revenue streams give you the ability to cover yourself in case something happens, like a government shutdown. I am fortunate enough in that I have multiple streams of revenue, and I'm thankful for that. If I did not have multiple streams of revenue, this government shutdown would have bit me in the ass hardcore. So to this point, I get it. And if you are a young man out there that is considering marriage or a long-term relationship with somebody, you should 100% have more than one way that you are earning revenue, that you are generating revenue. That's how I look at it. It could be, let's say you've just graduated college, you are in the workforce, you haven't necessarily created some type of business yet. You could be working a normal 9 to 5. I was working right after my divorce. I was working my 9 to 5 job, and then I would get done, grab something to eat, and then I would go do Uber for several hours to earn additional revenue. That's just one example. You could create some type of online business or have some type of platform that sells something. You could consult. You could use your skills to build something for other people. Something. But this part right here, where you have multiple streams of revenue, is one of the most important points that I think you can get yourself into, that once you have it, it makes other decisions easier. Some people say that most marriages fail because of money, not love. I don't know if I believe in that, but I think that it is one of the top reasons. And I think that in today's modern society, it would be dope if you are a dual income, multiple revenue stream household. I also think that, and the point and the title of this is 52 Things Men Should Consider. But I would also say, when you understand what it takes to build this stuff up and you're building yourself up, then you also can recognize the person that you're going to allow to come into your fold, or y'all work on this thing called life together. And you won't just bring some strag into that that can or would have the ability to easily break that down. That's my 2 cents on that one. Coach Greg Adams' next point here, he talks about learn a skill that represents freedom. And I'm going to bring that up here. Learn a skill that represents freedom. Now, his point specifically is to ride a motorcycle. And let me fix my banner up here. He says, now this might seem silly, but when you get married, you aren't going to be riding a motorcycle anytime soon. I can't stand that thought. You shouldn't be changing things just because of getting into a relationship. I'm not doing that. Let's see. He says a lot of spouses don't want their other spouse, especially if they're depending on them financially, to take risk associated with riding bikes. I believe that a mature person should be riding a motorcycle. It should be someone that realizes the weight of their decision when they get on that bike. So what he's saying is essentially, when you realize the importance of decision making, he's making the argument that a mature person is going to realize, hey, when I go out and I step outside and I make the decision to ride this bike, I'm not going to be reckless out there because I have other people depending on me. And that having that mindset is going to help you in your relationship out long term. That's essentially the point in what he's making here. And I do agree with that fully. His next point, he says, volunteer. Volunteer in your community. See what families are like and see what struggling families are like. This one right here, besides the ones with money, I would also say is huge. And when people are talking, sit back and just listen. If you have the ability to find yourself around other people that are married or in long-term relationships, let them tell you about how theirs is. See if they talk about it with happiness and excitement, or if they talk about it like it's straight doom and gloom. And don't just dismiss what they're saying as all that'll be something that happens to them. It won't happen to me. No, it will happen to you. If you're seeing things that people are using and it's like, man, that looks like success, learn from them. If you see some things and you're listening to people and you go, man, that sounds like a lot of dysfunction, learn from that too. Learn from that too. This next point, and this is something that I need to really figure out. He says, learn to cook. And hold up, I'm gonna bring this up on the screen. I think I got a comment here. No, that is a bot. Man, the bots are pulling up today. He says, learn to cook. And this is one of his last 2 points. And he goes on to write, unfortunately, everything that we have in this society is pretty much instant gratification. Food is pre-made, or you can just Uber Eats it, whatever. I do a lot of Uber Eating. It is in my budget, but I do a lot of ordering through Uber Eats. Now, again, I have it budgeted for that, but if I needed to like rebudget my money, that would be one of the first things that would change. Can I cook? I can make food for myself that I'll eat, but I do not feel confident in cooking for others. The last point that he has here is get some life insurance. And this is another one of those points that when you're looking at it, and he talks about life insurance, his point is being able to protect your legacy or having something that should something happen to you, you're not going to put your family in a bind, being able to, with them not being able to have resources for themselves. But he makes the argument that most men don't die with nothing to pass down, and that the people that are left behind have to start over broke, thus keeping a cycle of people not having wealth. I also believe that if you get insurance when you're younger and you include that into a part of your budget, then you understand what you need to have for that line item to be able to continue that, so that you're not just out here insurance-less, not paying, life insurance, car insurance, things that when something comes up and you have to use it, if you don't have it available, it'll put you that much further behind and that much more in a bind going forward. Now, I think that's the last point that he made for chapter 2. Yeah, because chapter 3, he talks about sowing your oats. Now, I went back and I reread this, but I need to remember the points that he made for that before I could present that part. So I'm going to look at doing that chapter 3 on Monday. What time is it? 7:20? All right, it is Friday. Hope if y'all got plans for the weekend, make sure that they are good, safe, fun plans. Going into the weekend, don't get in trouble, because if you do, you ain't getting out of jail or bailed out until possibly that following Monday. Protect your neck. Be safe. I'm out. Peace.
Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Trumpets blare the golden call. A throne awaits, I rise so tall. Drums like thunder, shake the hall. Royal robe, I wear the weight. Diamonds cut the night, no debate. Heavy is the head, but I'm feeling great. Crown me king, crown me king. Horns will shout, let the kingdom sing. Crown me king, crown me king. Bow to the sound, feel the power I bring. Yeah. I bring.